But here's the thing, we are not going to win the world that we need, not just the world that we want, but the world that we need, if we are kind of sort of in favor of it. We are going to have to be on fire for it, okay? And that is why I support Bernie Sanders to be the next president of the United States.
Naomi Klein, who has never, ever endorsed, has just endorsed Bernie Sanders for president.
Because Bernie understands that this is the fight of our lives. And yeah, we are up against powerful forces. And that means we need to organize an incredibly powerful movement to stand up to those forces. I could sit here and tell you why Bernie's Green New Deal plan is better than all the other candidates, and it is by far, but that is not even the real reason why I support Bernie for president. I support Bernie because there's no point in having a good Green New Deal plan if you're not building the movement to win it.
Come on. Don't cut out, buddy.
That 0 means I'm out of time, right? I couldn't actually see it. Am I out of time? Can someone tell me? All right. All right. I don't know if I'm out of time. I'm just going to end with a little bit more fire for you guys, okay? Now, the kind of fire that we need to find in ourselves is not the fires of destruction and annihilation that we have seen in California, that we have seen in the Amazon, these fires that leave scorched earth behind. Fire is also a life-giving force. And for millennia, indigenous people have used fire to clear away debris, to clear away dead wood and make room for new growth.
That's right.
And the fire clears away the debris and the ash feeds the soil. And it prevents those wildfires that are so destructive. And that is the kind of fire that we need to locate in ourselves so that we can truly be in this moment. We need to clear away whatever debris is standing in our way, is keeping us from being in this fight with everything that we have, because everything is on the line. And we need to clear away the debris on the outside. We need to clear away the debris of the climate change deniers who are still out there, soaked in fossil fuel money, spreading doubt and misinformation in this moment when we cannot afford that. We need a movement that burns bright and hot enough to clear away that debris. And we also need a movement that burns bright and hot enough to burn away the debris of the distractors. All of this distraction coming at us, telling us that everything is more important than this. Telling us that we should just follow whatever Trump's latest tweet is, or whatever the latest, celebrity gossip is, or whatever it is.
Well said.
We need to clear away the debris of the distractors. And we also need to clear away the debris of the doomers. I don't know if you know who I mean. Some of my friends call them the doomer dudes. These are the people who have sort of turned a fetish into the idea that it's all too late, right? We're doomed. We're too selfish. All we are is we're just atomized individuals anyway. They've confused human nature with capitalism, and so they tell us we'll never rise to this challenge. We need to clear away the debris of the doomers. And most of all, we need to clear away the debris of the dividers, turning us against one another, pitting us against each other when we need to be more united, more powerful than we have ever been before. We cannot mess this up. We cannot blow this. There are no second chances. And that is why I'm here tonight. In 2016, I supported Bernie by writing a couple of articles, but I kept my distance. I am not keeping my distance now. There is a democratic socialist with a chance of winning this election, running on the Green New Deal of our dreams. So this is not a moment to wait and see which way the wind is blowing. This is the moment to create our own weather. Thanks, my friends.
Wow, well done.
Please welcome back to the stage Lynn County Supervisor Stacey Walker.
That was something else. Naomi Klein just now at the Des Moines, Iowa Climate Crisis Summit. That's what we're watching now. And I was quite touched by that, as a matter of fact.
Let's hear it one more time for Naomi Klein.
And Naomi Klein has just endorsed Bernie Sanders.
This room just keeps getting bigger and bigger. I love the energy in this room. I was backstage and I ran into the good Senator Sanders, who you will hear from in a moment. And he mentioned to me, he said, you know, in 2016, I talked a lot about climate change and the environment, and people would nod their heads and say, okay, yeah, sure, that's an issue. But look at where we are right now. Look at this room.
Let's go.
He has made this a priority. And so every now and again, you have the privilege of being aware that you are existing in one of those rare moments of history.
That's right. Let's go, folks.
Where a great challenge meets its match. You know that our great-grandchildren will read of this time that we are in, asking themselves, how did we ever make it? They will say the odds seemed stacked against us, that the idea of cooperation and mass action seemed like a pipe dream. But somehow, some way, there was a spark. And that spark would ignite an entire movement. Millions of people coming together, united around a common cause to save this planet and to make gentle the lives of others. Now, my grandmother often talked about it. She was born in the Deep South near the end of the Second Great War. She grew up witnessing unspeakable horrors. The granddaughter of a slave, she moved north as a young single mom, hoping to find a better life. She would catch the tail end of the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as he worked in Chicago to call attention to the gross injustice of wealth inequality and poor working conditions for those who were fortunate enough to even have a job.
All right, so this guy's going to introduce, in just a few minutes here, he's going to introduce the Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Ocasio-Cortez is probably
that was growing stronger by the day.
And then she will speak. This is Stacey Walker. He's the Bernie 2020 of Iowa co-chair.
Was moving beyond unity. As one freedom fighter reminded us yesterday, he was after solidarity. He was willing to fight for someone else because someone had fought for him. My grandmother would adopt me and my sister after we lost our mother to an unsolved homicide when I was 4 years old. And she raised us to be concerned about our neighbors, about our community. She taught us to stand up for what we believed in, to fight for what we knew to be right. She taught us to give more than we took.
Very strange. Sorry.
To work hard, to smile at strangers, to forgive often, and to leave this world a little better than how we found it. Earlier, I talked about being aware that we're in a special moment in time. And the task of leaving this world a little better than how we found it is shaping up to be quite the challenge. But it's not an insurmountable one. Because we have in our very midst a few individuals who have sparked a movement and inspired millions of people to reclaim their power and their country. Ordinary people who have found the courage to meet the moment of challenge with fierce resolve. Robert Kennedy was one of my favorite speechwriters, and in a speech he gave in South Africa, he reminded the audience of how ordinary people, many of them young people, could change the world. And there's this passage where he's going through these folks, and he says, a young monk began the Protestant Reformation. It was a young general who extended an empire from Macedonia to the borders of the earth. It was a young woman who reclaimed the territory of France, and a 32-year-old Thomas Jefferson who proclaimed that all men are created equal. Now, you can start out
I'm going to drop him down. Can I do that? Yeah, I can. Look, see.
Anywhere. You can start out even as a
I'm sending him down. See that? I'm updating that thing and bringing that audio down. So now you should be able to hear me more than you can hear what's going on back there in the background. And the reason why I'm doing that is because this is for the Iowans there. But what we're really talking about is here we go, coming up.
To you, a woman who frankly needs no introduction, because she is one of the most inspiring political figures of our time. But indulge me for a moment. This third-generation child of the Bronx grew up as no stranger to hard work. She lost her father at a young age, which brought emotional and financial stress to the family. They had to sell their home and make other changes, but they persevered. She worked her way through college, spending time in Senator Ted Kennedy's office. There she would see and hear stories of families being separated by ICE. And she would graduate magna cum laude from Boston University, all while continuing to work as a bartender to support herself and her family. She would go on to volunteer for Senator Sanders in 2016 in the South Bronx. And a few years later, she would take on the establishment and run one of the most inspiring campaigns of my lifetime to win a seat in the United States House of Representatives as the youngest woman in American history to ever do it. This is one bad sister. She's so bad that her initials have become an international symbol of strength and resistance, of power to the people.
This is great.
So, my friends, I want you to stand to your feet and help me bring to the stage Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Yeah, I'll do that. Sure, I'll do that.
Hey, everyone!
Hey.
Amazing. Let's hear it for Stacey Walker.
Yeah, well done.
Are you all ready for a Green New Deal? Are you all ready to provide justice for our Native communities? Are you all ready to create and demand millions of jobs in the United States of America and to reclaim our future? Because that is what today is all about. That is what this moment is all about. Because it is about how we respond to crisis. And in crisis, some people waver. Some people shrink. Some people choose to bow to cynicism and to give up our future and to say that all hope is lost. That is what a lot of people do in crisis. But the people who change the world are the people who refuse to accept who refuse to accept our decline. They're the people who understand and know that our future is whatever we choose it to be. And I don't know about you, but I refuse and reject and absolutely will not accept the choice I refuse to accept the choice of leaving a planet that is diminished and dying to the next generation. I refuse to choose that. And because we refuse to choose that, then what we have no choice to do is to act. We have to act. Because all of us, whether you're here in Iowa or whether whether you're my family from the Bronx or from Puerto Rico, all of us are being impacted by the climate crisis. Every single one of us. There are folks, almost right after I got sworn in, there was a Republican member that told me that caring about the climate was elitist. Yeah, elitist. As though billionaires aren't buying up their enclaves thinking they can protect themselves from this. What's elitist is thinking this isn't a problem. What is elitist is thinking that you can buy yourself immunity from the floods and the wildfires and the droughts. That is what is elitist. What's elitist is thinking that you can sit on a pile of money and you'll be okay while your neighbors aren't. That is elitist.
This is Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
And it's a bunch of bull.
Live from Des Moines, Iowa. She is the U.S. representative from District 14 in New York.
So shortly after we got in, and shortly after sworn in, we introduced the Green New Deal resolution. And immediately, the reactions were all over the place. I mean, anyone who has had the misfortune of turning on Fox News understands how fixated they are. And, but it is very powerful, because since then, we've had several hearings, and we've known and seen almost a conspiracy, in a way. Because ExxonMobil knew exactly what was happening and exactly what was going to happen in the 1970s. Let's talk about the truth. Let's talk about brass tacks. Because what they did is that they had an inkling that carbon emissions could increase global temperatures to unsustainable levels due to the burning of fossil fuels. They knew this, they had that inkling. So they dumped tons of money in scientific studies in the 1970s. We interviewed and we questioned the scientists ourselves. They had models going back decades predicting 415 parts per million in the year 2019, in the 1970s. And what did they do? Did they change their models? No. Did they change their business? No. Did they sound the alarm? No. No, they dumped millions of dollars in lobbying a campaign of doubt. And that is exactly why we have to acknowledge that the climate crisis is not an accident. Do you really? It is not an accident. It is not a coincidence, it is a consequence. And that is why we need to connect the dots when it comes to the climate crisis. Do you really believe that if oil and gas were not one of the most profitable things in the world, that we would be burning our planet to our destruction? Do you really believe that? Nobody does. Nobody does. The reason we are in this, the reason we are in this crisis is because oil and gas has been one of the most profitable industries of the modern era. And when we talk about fighting money in politics, what we're talking about is fighting big oil. We're talking about fighting Wall Street. We're talking about fighting big pharma. We're talking about fighting endless wars. That's what fighting big money means.
Let's go.
And like we said in New York, when we were running a long shot campaign for Congress against one of the most powerful and wealthy members, is that we've got people and they've got money. But here's the thing about big money. is that big money is very lonely because we've got people on our side. The thing about billionaires is that there's not too many of them. And the only reason they're able to try to purchase influence in their elections is when people aren't actively coming together and stitching our movements together in order to combat the growth and in order to combat the influence of big money. And like I said last night, let me tell you something. This movement is real. This movement is growing. Don't let anyone convince you that no one cares about climate change. Last night, we were in Council Bluffs, Iowa, and held the largest rally of the presidential cycle last night in Council Bluffs, in Iowa. 2,400 people in Council Bluffs last night to talk about these issues. Because we know, and one of the things that I said last night, is that there's a lot of talk about unity. There's a lot of talk about unity in this moment, but very little talk about what we're unifying under. Because the thing is that Trump is a symptom.
Right.
He is a symptom of much deeper problems.
Well said. Completely. And not only that, he's the very latest symptom. He's the very young lady, I can tell you.
He didn't fall into the White House. He didn't fall in there. He was elected.
No, he was manipulated.
Which means we've got deeper issues to deal with. Because there was a lot of discontent leading up to that moment. So there is no way that we're going to get through this moment without guaranteeing health care to every American. We can't, because here's the thing, is that we can beat him, but we have to vaccinate ourselves against something like this ever happening again. And the way we inoculate ourselves from late-stage, hyper-capitalistic concentration of wealth among the very, very few is with the labor movement. The way we inoculate ourselves from continuing to burn up our planet at unsustainable level, triggering feedback loops that we have not even begun to comprehend, is by honoring indigenous wisdom and allowing it to guide our climate policy. The way that we preserve our systems is by transitioning to principles of universality. That means I want you clothed, I want you educated, I want you paid a living wage, no ifs, ands, or buts. And what that also means, and what Naomi talked about as well, is directly, consciously combating white supremacy in the United States of America. Because I, for the life of me, cannot understand why we get so panicked about terrorist activity all over the world and we don't seem to recognize it in our own backyard. And I want to talk about this a little bit, because when we first introduced the Green New Deal, we talk about frontline communities. We talk about bringing it straight to communities that were left behind, rural communities, poor communities, Flint, the South Bronx, Baltimore. We talk about putting these communities first, and one of the first things that we heard from folks is just worry about the solar panels. Leave the social justice stuff behind. Wow. Always. And it's funny how that's always the case. We're always telling people, you know, and somehow big consultants are always telling you that, race makes everything complicated, or talking about poverty makes everything complicated. It was almost a taboo word to talk about poverty in Washington, D.C. The reason for that, and I want to tell you a little story, is one of the things that we know too is none of these policies are that new. We have done this before.
Decades.
We have done this before.
It's been going on since Reagan.
But let me tell you a little story about
culmination of a problem.
how these systems got dismantled. Because we started to treat housing as a right and developing robust, beautiful, invested public housing in the United States. We treated college education as a right. It was free or virtually free to all Americans until when? In New York City, we had a system, CUNY, and it was virtually tuition free. When did they start charging tuition? When schools and colleges began to get integrated. When racial integration came to many of our institutions of higher education, we then started to transitioning to economic discrimination. So when we talk about establishing systems of universality, anti-racism is a very important part of that. Because this idea,
young, impressive.
Because this idea that, neoliberalism just, et cetera, just dismantled it, what were the tools of that? The tool of that was the myth of the quote-unquote welfare queen, is this idea that I don't want to pay for somebody else, right? But that is coded, that is layered. We're not paying for anybody else. This is for us. We are owning these systems. They are public systems. It's not a handout. We built this. This is ours. There are folks that are trying to completely purchase our political system, running as Republicans and now tossing in their hats as Democrats in the field as well. But what we're here to say is that in a democracy, it shouldn't matter how much money you have. What should matter is whether you vote, whether you caucus, whether you turn out. It's the numbers, it's the people, it's a movement. And when it comes to a Green New Deal, people say, always, always, always with this question of how are you going to pay for it? As though we're not paying for it now. As though the Midwest wasn't underwater this year. As though 3,000 Americans didn't die in Puerto Rico in Hurricane Maria. As though Hurricane Katrina didn't happen. As though sea levels aren't rising. As though California isn't on fire. How do we pay for that? The way we pay for this is with a people-powered movement. We're going to come together, invest our systems, and decide that instead of paying for our destruction, we're going to pay to come together and rebuild this nation. Thank you very much. And with that, I introduce to you our brother, my field in this movement, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Pretty moving stuff. Let's see.
Whoa! In case you haven't noticed, we got a lot of people here. Let me begin by thanking the panelists who opened up this program and all the work that they have been doing for many years on climate change. Let me thank Representative Jeff Kurtz for being here and for the work he has done. Let me thank one of the great writers in America and a dear and longtime friend of mine, Naomi Klein, for being here. And let me thank one of the great political leaders in the state of Iowa, Stacey Walker, for his remarks. And last but not least, let me thank somebody who has in the last year inspired millions of people to get involved in the political process, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Stacey Walker, in his remarks, mentioned something that is true, that earlier this afternoon I mentioned to him and some other folks that 4 years ago when I was running around Iowa and New Hampshire and going all over this country, I talked about climate change. And people nodded their heads and they said, yeah, it's a serious problem. I was on a national debate and the moderator said, what do you think is the great national security crisis facing this country? And I said, climate change. People kind of didn't fully appreciate that answer. But the point is that over the last 4 years, as I go around the country today, people do understand the reality of climate change and the danger climate change poses and the need for unprecedented, bold action to address this crisis. I wish from the bottom of my heart, I really do, that I could tell you that, you know, we don't need aggressive, unprecedented action. A little bit of stuff here and a little bit of stuff here, we can solve the problem. But if I told you that, I would be lying to you, and I would be betraying my kids, my 7 grandchildren, and future generations. Brothers and sisters, we have a major global crisis in front of us, and we are going to need unprecedented action in order to address it.
It's true. I don't know. Anybody denying it is really cursing us.
The scientists, leading scientists all over the world, have told us that we have fewer than 12 years to act boldly to transform our energy system away from fossil fuels and into energy efficiency and sustainable energy, or our entire planet. I'm not talking about Iowa or Vermont or America. I am talking about the threat to our entire planet. And from a moral perspective, we cannot turn our backs on future generations. We have a moral responsibility to make certain that the planet we leave our children and grandchildren is a planet that is healthy and habitable. That is not a choice. That is what we have got to do. Now, building on the Green New Deal, we have brought forth a rather detailed proposal, and I have been criticized by some who say it is expensive. Well, they're right, it is. It's $16 trillion over a 10-year period. That's a lot of money. But I want you to tell me what the alternative is in terms of saving the planet. There was a piece today in the New York Times, and scientists have been talking about it, good piece in the New York Times today, and it said that the scientific community has underestimated the speed at which climate change is causing havoc in the planet. Underestimated it. So we got a choice out there. Here's the choice. We can listen to people like Trump and the fossil fuel industry who deny the reality of climate change. And as all of you know, I disagree with Trump on everything. That's an understatement. But on this one, he is threatening the well-being not only of our country, but the entire world. So obviously, unlike Trump, we listen to science. That's one. And then there are other people out there who say, well, Bernie, you know, climate change is real, no question about it. But we have to be realistic. You know, we can't spend this much. We can't do that. It's too disruptive. Well, I think when the future of the planet is at stake, we have got to be bold and aggressive. We have got to tell the fossil fuel industry that their short-term profits are not more important than the future of our planet.
Let's go, Bernie, let's go. Run, Bernie, run.
All of you know, last 5 years, warmest years on record. You know that just this last June and July were the warmest months in history. And despite Donald Trump talking about climate change as a hoax, we are facing an unprecedented threat to our food and water supplies. We are facing incredible threats to major coastal cities all over America and all over the world that threaten to displace hundreds of millions of dollars. Hundreds of millions of people, forget the dollars. And what the scientists are telling us is that great cities like New York City, like Miami, like Hong Kong, cities all over the world could be underwater by the end of the century if we do not get our act together. So what we are here to say is we have an unprecedented global crisis, and the leadership of the United States of America should not be denying that reality. It should be bringing the entire world together to address it.
Thank you. Thank you, Bernie.
Now, I have a dream. Now, maybe this dream is unrealistic, maybe. But I think it is an imperative, and that is right now, as a planet, countries around the world are spending some $1.8 trillion on weapons of destruction designed to kill each other. We need global leadership coming from the United States of America, which says to Russia and China and Pakistan and India and Brazil and countries all over the world that instead of spending fortunes trying to kill each other, we got to pool our resources against our common enemy, which is climate change.
Okay, Bernie. It's just straight sense. It's common sense being assaulted by billionaires who spend money on marketing people who were trained by the craziest
And when I
propagandists.
look at the young people here in the Sunrise Movement, and when I look at young people all over the world, this may be the moment when young people look their parents in the eye and say, now is the time to save the planet. Being here in Iowa today, and we can make the same case in every state in this country, But in Iowa, if we do not get our act together, the number of dangerously hot days in this state, where the heat index is 100 degrees or higher, is estimated to jump from 5 days a year today to 40 days a year by 2050. Do you know what that means to the people of the state, to agriculture, to the economy? Scientists expect the number of days above 90 degrees in Iowa to nearly triple by the middle of this century. And let's talk about not only heat and its impact on agriculture or all of our lives or human mortality, let's talk about floods. From the summer of 2018 to the spring of this year, Iowa set a record for rain and snow with over 50 inches of precipitation, the wettest since 1895, causing a record-breaking $2 billion in damages. 7 of the 15 biggest floods in Davenport's history have taken place over the last 10 years.
Listen to this.
Unless we get our act together, total rainfall in the Cedar River Basin, covering 1/3 of Iowa,
state to state,
is
studying every
projected to double by 2050 from more intense
and sharing
storms
science, environmental
as a result
science.
of climate change. And let's be clear,
How
these
is there
floods
even
are already causing serious economic pain to Iowa's farmers. In 2013, about 700,000 acres of highly productive Iowa farmland went unplanted because of muddy conditions. In just one spring in 2014, Iowa lost nearly 14 million tons of soil from its cropland due to a series of major storms. This year's flooding and overly wet conditions from climate change meant that over 19 million acres of land were left
Here's a man who's traveled the
unplanted
country and he's been a public servant for so long. None of the other candidates have any.
We get our act together.
You could say Biden because he was vice
Corn
president,
yields
but
right here in Iowa are projected to go down by 25%.
Sheer lack of creativity.
By the year 2050, as a result of intense heat waves, heavy rainfall, and droughts made worse by climate change. And let me tell you about rising sea levels. With the melting of the ice caps in the Antarctica and in Greenland all over this world, in the next 50, 100 years, major cities will be underwater. Since the year 2000, the top 10 natural disasters in this country, including Hurricanes Katrina, Harvey, Maria, and Sandy, cost over $660 billion in damage and over 5,000 human deaths. So that is where we are. We are in a moment in history which is unprecedented, a moment in which the future of the entire planet is at stake, and we have the moral responsibility now to stand up and say, we will save this planet for our children and our grandchildren.
I bored everybody with the stats and the energy's all out of the room.
And let me tell you what that means.
Bernie could suck the energy out of a room.
Bernie Sanders administration, we are not going to continue to do as Trump does, and that is give hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks and subsidies to the fossil fuel industry. That is going to end. And we are going to make sure that our administration meets the recommendations of climate scientists by moving to 100% renewable energy for electricity and transportation by 2030 and decarbonizing our economy by 2050.
Let's go, man. Let's go. All this is too late. You know, I asked for this for decades. The rage and the emotions of the direct result of it finally coming around
And
somehow.
when we do that, by the way, and this is what Alexandria was talking about and
Okay,
others, Naomi
boomer.
was talking about, is we're going to create up to 20 million good-paying jobs. Under the plan that we have brought forth, which is the most comprehensive climate change plan ever brought forth by any presidential candidate, in fact, by any candidate for federal office. We will be making an historic $16.3 trillion investment in sustainable energies like wind and solar. We'll be investing in manufacturing, infrastructure, and research and development. And when we do that, these kinds of investments will be of enormous consequence to the economy of Iowa and the economies of every state in this country.
There you go, Bernie. You got him back a little bit.
Today, nationally, more than 57,000 farms are taking advantage of renewable energy production, which has more than doubled since 2007. In fact, Iowa now generates about 1/3 of your electricity from wind. Congratulations, Iowa. And that is good, but we have got to do better in Iowa and all over this country. And in order to do that, our proposal will greatly expand the existing federal power system to provide reliable, affordable electricity for all Americans. In other words, in this moment of crisis, the federal government is going to become heavily involved in the production of sustainable energy.
Come on, Bernie, let's go.
We're not going to beg the corporate world to do it. We're going to have to do it ourselves.
Let's go, Bernie.
We will use our existing energy-producing agencies to expand wind, solar, energy storage, and geothermal power plants, and fully eliminate fossil fuel energy sources.
Way to go, man.
And despite what the fossil fuel industry wants you to believe, the reality is that solar and wind are already cheaper than coal.
Yeah, obvious stuff. Science, basic science that's been rejected by Trump, the moron, who's just got
And I got to tell you
money
that it is
driving.
really an embarrassment as I go around the country to states like Arizona and Florida, states which have Puerto Rico, places which have enormous potential for solar, and to understand that the fossil fuel industry has fought tooth and nail to prevent these states and territories from moving to solar. Well, when we together are in office, that dynamic is going to change.
Let's go, Bernie. Come on, let's go, Bernie.
We will also be investing in energy efficiency so that we get the most out of the energy we are generating. That is the low-hanging fruit. And when we make our buildings and our homes energy efficient, not only do we cut back on carbon emissions, we are going to save people substantial sums of money on their electric bills and their fuel bills. And furthermore, we will build a resilient, secure, and energy-efficient smart grid. And that means requiring that new construction and existing commercial buildings meet tough energy efficiency and electrification standards.
Let's go, Bernie.
And it means aggressively weatherizing homes and businesses in a way that will let us reduce residential energy
So
consumption
we are checking out Bernie
by
Sanders'
30%.
Climate Crisis Summit. We've had speakers such as Naomi Klein, Alexandria
And we will
Ocasio-Cortez.
create millions of jobs rebuilding our
And now
roads,
Bernie is
bridges, and water systems.
talking very frankly about infrastructural changes that he would
People of America deserve to know that when you turn on the water faucet in your home, that water is not toxic. And we will protect the right of all workers to form a union without threats of intimidation from the corporate elite.
Thank you. Although the gig economy makes unions pretty dang tough, let me tell you.
Now, I would not be telling you the truth if I were to tell you that all of this is easy. And to be political for a moment,
Oh, we missed the
look,
joke.
what we are trying to do here in this campaign is not only defeat Trump, what we are trying to do is to transform this country. And what we understand and why the message of our campaign is us, not me, is we understand perhaps uniquely of all the presidential candidates that no president of the United States, not the most honest and well-intentioned, can do it alone. And what Alexandria was talking about, and what our campaign is about, is the need to build an unprecedented grassroots movement.
Let's go.
Of working people, black and white and Latino, Native American, Asian American, gay, straight, immigrant, native born. And we need that movement. We need that movement because if anybody here thinks that taking on the greed and the corruption of the corporate elite is going to be easy, you're wrong. I'm a United States Senator, and I deal with these guys every single day. They have extraordinary power. We're fighting for a Medicare for all single-payer system. And right now, because the industry made $100 billion in profits last year, they have endless amounts of money to spend on TV ads right here in Iowa, lying about what Medicare for all will do.
Lying, straight lying.
We're taking on Wall Street, who are charging you 20, 25, 30% interest rates on your credit card. We're taking on the pharmaceutical industry, which is charging us the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. We're taking on the military-industrial complex, which supports endless wars because they make money from endless wars. We're taking on the prison industrial complex because we're going to do away with private prisons and detention centers in this country. And we're going to take on the whole damn 1% and make them start paying their fair share of taxes.
Go get him, Bernie.
I say all that, I say that to you because this is an unprecedented campaign. I'm not running just to be president. I'm not running just to beat the most dangerous president in history. I am running with your help to transform this country so that finally we have an economy, an energy system, a government that works for all of us, not just wealthy campaign contributors. So our campaign, and I want you to understand this. Do you think that as president, I sit down with the fossil fuel industry and I say, hey guys, as Naomi was saying before and others were saying, you have known for decades that the product, the carbon you are producing is destroying this planet. Stop it. Be nice guys. Be responsible citizens. Do the right thing. Move. Move your resources to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. And you think these guys are going to say, Bernie, you made a very convincing argument. We hadn't thought of that before. Wow, why didn't we think of that? Yeah, tomorrow, that's what we're going to do. We're getting out of oil and gas and coal. No more fracking. We're going to start investing in solar and wind. It doesn't happen like that. The only way that real change ever takes place, has ever taken place, is when millions of people stand up and are prepared to fight for justice.
Well, this younger generation is, they outnumber us. I'm on track.
That is the history of the labor movement in America.
Boomers and the youth, yes. And now, you know.
It is the history of the civil rights movement in America. It is the history of the women's movement in America. It is the history of the gay rights movement in this country. And that is where we are right now. That is where we are right now at an unprecedented moment, not only in terms of climate change, but in terms of this country moving to an oligarchic form of society. So today, what we are saying to the fossil fuel industry in particular, but to the entire corporate elite, this country and our future belong to all of us, not just a handful of billionaires. And the struggle that we are waging is not just for you or you or you. This is for our kids and future generations. This is a struggle we cannot afford to lose. Thank you very much.
Way to go, Bernie. All right. The Bernie Bros and Sisters. Look, they call them Bernie Bros, and half the audience is
Thank you.
doing it. And all races and ages.
Thank you.
I mean, the disparities.
And now let me bring back to the stage Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Alexandria. Okay, oh, wow, it's loud. I think we have a process in which we're going to take some questions. Is that the plan? Okay. Okay, we got a microphone over there. Then we got about a half hour of questions. Is that the only mic we got?
There's 3 mics.
Or we got 3 mics.
Oh, one right here?
Raise your hand where the
right
mics
there.
are. One there?
1, 2, 3.
One there,
4.
1 there. Okay, that's it.
5.
Okay, so we got about a half hour for questions. Probably give us your name, make them short. And if they're really, really hard questions, address them to Alexandria. Okay, let's start right here. No, we'll start right there and then we'll head this way. Okay, we've got a question right there. Yeah, sir, your name and question.
Hello, my name's...
You gotta get into that mic,
With
sir.
the microphone right there.
This is at Drake University's Bell Center. This is.
Hey, it works now. For either of you, part of the nature of the Green New Deal involves removing or replacing certain industries such as the healthcare industry. What would you say to workers who are currently entrenched in those who may not be able to transition to any of the new manufacturing or construction jobs you're trying to create?
You're right. When you're talking about major transformation, there is no question that some people are going to be losing their jobs, while many others are going to be gaining new employment. For example, in terms of the Green New Deal, we estimate that we can create 20 million new good-paying jobs, which is a lot more than the jobs we're going to lose. And in terms of healthcare as well as climate, what we have built in to both of those proposals are billions and billions of dollars for a just transition. To say to that worker, look, we are not anti-worker. Alexandria and I have 100% voting records for unions and workers. All right, that's what we do. And we will do our best to make sure that you have, at least in the case of the Green New Deal, 5 years of transition of income,
Republican students would do that
of
at UT all the
healthcare,
time.
and of job training to make sure that you're going to be able to get another good-paying job.
Absolutely.
So that is an obligation that we have. Alexandra, you want to add to that?
Yeah, and one thing that I'd also like to note as well is that this is not a plan that we're making for other industries. We've got workers from those industries at the table helping plan a just transition. In fact, one of my favorite examples of this is our brothers and sisters who are coal miners, particularly in regions like Appalachia. And what they're dealing with right now in the current conditions is that a lot of these fossil fuel jobs are quite extractive, not just from the earth, but from people and workers as well. And so right now, coal miners are being denied their pensions while coal barons are being bailed out by the federal government. And that has got to end. So part of a just transition is committing to courses of action, like bailing out and fully funding coal miners' pensions so that we can get to that next level and make sure that their children, their grandchildren, don't have to be exposed to
Yeah, we used to do that. You know, students would go to various. Oh, we lost it. All right. Hey, I'm going to wrap the show up and go back to watching this thing. And that was pretty cool. Bernie and co. Little announcement, politics on a middle perch live on the